Hey folks, welcome back to the Pulse. It's 11:15 Central Texas time on a Freedom Friday, and I've had a bit of an epiphany, a revelation. Have you sensed there's a disturbance in the force, my friends? I was listening to Brandon and I sensed it from him. It's amazing. He shared, if you've been watching Brandon, Tim Benjamin's video about the Alamo in Texan, and Brandon talking about people stepping up and stepping out. And so I wanted to talk today about unlocking abundance. And really, it's going to be different than what you expect, um, because it's some new content because it's a personal revelation. I'll be pretty transparent about it. Um, and I think that it's really, really helpful. It's an amazing pivotal time that we live in. And I think that we we kind of have the wrong perspective. And hopefully I'll shed some light on that. Some of this will be stream of consciousness today, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here because we have work to do. We've got work to do, and we don't do it in our own power. I don't know if you caught the last stream I did, which was with Scott Foster Harris. And that was called Please Tell Me the Truth, or Just Tell Me the Truth. And I wanted to spend time with Scott Foster Harris to really dive into his spiritual journey and really talk about the things that we had in common. And it was a really special, like 2 hour stream. If you missed that one, it was epic. Some of this will be a bit of a continuation of that, just some thoughts, but also just the emphasis on how important of a time that we're living in and how pivotal and critical it is. And so I want to welcome you back to the Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. And let's take a look at who's in the chat, and then we will get into the content. Rich liberation, freedom, and abundance is really the whole plan. That is the whole plan. Sam Kemp, good to see you. Good morning to you. Glad that you're here. Thanks for all your kind words and encouragement. Rich liberation, Texit all the way. What is Texit, folks? Well, you know what Brexit is, right? Brexit? Texit is Texas going their own way. The people of Texas are independent minded folks. And it's really cool. I'm from Michigan originally. I moved to Dallas in about the year 2000, and I meet a beautiful woman who becomes my wife. And we have children, and my daughter turns 15 today, my middle child. And I reflect on how fast time goes, right? My dad passed away. I was talking to my mom last night, and I'm just like, this is crazy stuff. It's like you just get older, and it's just it's fast. And anyone who's of any decent age will tell you, man, especially when you have kids, like works double or triple time. When you start reflecting on why are we here and what is my role to play, and then you start getting the right perspective on who you are and what you are here to do, you realize, wow, this is short, and this time is limited. But the power that is available to us is tremendous. But most people don't realize who they are. And so when we talk about this desire, and I think there's something knit in who we have this sense of the human heart is meant to be free, and we see this abundance around us. And why am I not experiencing this abundance in our lives? And or are we fighting over scarcity? And why are things the way that they are? I'm gonna break down why I believe things are the way that they are and what we can do about it. So this is going to be actually an interesting stream today, a little different tempo, a little different tone, but hopefully be something that it brings you value, encourages you, but also causes you to think maybe a little bit differently. And that's my goal. But rich liberation, Texit, what does it represent? It's a representation of the human heart's desire to be self-determined, to go its own way, but also in community to create. Because what is, leaving the union or a national divorce? It's actually a rebirth. It's a resetting. It's a rebooting of the system. When you think about the difference between what is America and what is the United States of America, You've got one, a corporation, and two, you have an idea. We love America in Texas. We love it. The idea. And what is the idea? It means different things to different people. And we're going to be talking about that today. So, Rich Liberation, thanks for the reminder. Texas, what does it represent? It's an extension of us collectively in our human hearts desiring to be free and sovereign and self determined because we believe that there's a future in which, when we are entrusted to make our own decisions rather than someone far, far away, that we can have a better chances at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Blue Collar Grunt is here, stuck at work, rainy day schedule, lol. Glad to have you here. I come from blue collar roots, so I know what you mean. M Reserve 9, good Friday to you. Thank God it's Friday, absolutely. What is up, my people? Terrence here. Magnus, let's go. Hexonium's in the house, and then there's David Lee. And the theme of David Lee is showing the love, sharing the love with the folks all the way from southwestern Indiana. And we do that. How do we share love with people? Well, we show love with people by, well, through many, many forms. But I think one of the most powerful things, you've probably heard this phrase before, that love covers a multitude of sins. What does that mean? Well, okay, you kind of have to relate to the fact that there's sins. I suppose you could say these are the wrong things, but that love in and of itself covers those things. It's interesting when you think about it. Well, when you're struggling or when you're having a difficult time and someone comes alongside of you, and it could be just a word, it could be understanding, it could be just sitting there with you at your dad's funeral, it could be anything, right? Do we get outside of ourselves and think about others and how we can cover a multitude of sins? Because in community, what's amazing is we divide each other's pain by bearing each other's burdens. We divide our pain and we multiply our joy. We get together as Mexicans, right? Multiply that joy. But then when you're struggling, it divides your pain because you're not alone. We're not meant to be alone. And so many men suffer in silence. And to me, one of the greatest things about this community and about crypto is the fact that you are not alone. You have got friends here in Hexico and Texaco. Good morning from Australia. It's 3 a.m. here. You're staying up late. You're living in the future. But thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Bragg, good to see you. Humberto Gonzalez, hey, Heartbeat, proclaiming blessings from the Heavenly Father over you and your loved ones. Cheers from sunny Miami. Man, welcome to Miami. Humberto Gonzalez, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And that's the extension of love, right? Thinking about other people, saying, hey, blessings to you, right? Thank you very much. And you as well, my friend. Hexonium, Ohio disaster fire equals chemical warfare, material burning. You know, it's interesting. You know, I was listening to somebody that I think was somewhat of a chemist that understands vinyl chloride burning. And then ultimately, what does that create but hydrochloric acid? And how does that impact things and neutralize? And what does it do to the water and all that stuff? Is it an intentional thing? Or is it a disaster and an accident? It's a good question. I don't know the answer. Humberto says, in the kingdom of our Father, there's abundance. It's actually one of the characteristics of the kingdom. And that's what's so interesting about this, is that I think we all sense that something is wrong, right? Something is broken. Something is not the way it is. I do not think it means what you think it means. I don't think that it's exactly the way that it's meant to be. And of course, we know on earth as it is in heaven, this idea that we assume, and I think most people that kind of casually think about life and death, they think about, well, there's got to be more than this. There's got to be better, because this seems to be at times pretty good, right? I experience some joy and some love and some peace, but there's something wrong. There's one that's creeping around who's trying to devour us. And that's going to be a big part of what we talk about today, of how do we go about unlocking abundance? What is that process? What do we do? What's our role? What's our responsibility? And of course, you know, here we are, right? Financially, you know, look what the markets have done today, right? Oh no, spiking. You know, we got a spike in our inflation, right? Oh no, what are we going to do? Everyone blown around by the wind. Let's understand the times that we live in and where we are in this story and what roles we have to play, because it's actually probably the most exciting time to live in human history. Francis Powell, hello all. Good to see you. Extravagant Taste. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone from Extravagant Taste. Taste and see that the Lord is good. DGen Dougie Peach, Mr. Matt, what's up? DGen Dougie Peach, good to see you here. It is Friday, about 11:26 Central Texas time. It is good to see you. I'm getting a little bit of an earlier start because we got a lot going on. I don't know if you know this, but we made an announcement that we are moving into a very, very serious phase. And I talk about unlocking abundance. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to put our efforts and energy in a full-time effort to go after tokenizing communities. And then we're going to launch a DEX. And then we're going to unify all of it with a token, an incentive token. We are going to get serious. Not that we haven't been serious, but it's time. It's really time we do that. And what's been so cool is we made that announcement that we were doing a private placement memorandum and raising capital from accredited investors. And I've been blown away by how many people have reached out. So if you're one of those folks, thank you so much. I appreciate it. There's still an opportunity to do that. If you want the executive summary for our project, you can email me. My email is in the description, matt@b4.vc. Magnus, good to see you. Mr. Peach and Hexonium. All right, so let's talk about this. Let's get into the content. Today, unlocking abundance. Well, the assumption by those terms is that abundance is locked. I talked to you a lot about this idea of, well, what do you do when you give? Does it change things? You know, if you look at the history of giving, and this has been my background for 22 plus years, is this idea and how do you go about raising money for nonprofit organizations, for causes? And if you've ever given to a nonprofit organization, you kind of look at why do we give? And what's the whole purpose of giving? And what does it do? Well, giving can actually be quite manipulative. And there's a lot of reasons that people give. And there's a lot of reasons that people give gifts. One of the reasons that people give gifts a lot of times is what they get from it. And what they get is their reward. And what is their reward? A lot of times it's what's called reciprocity, is that people would get something in return for their gift, right? I'm giving you this so that you feel obligated to give me something. And that's manipulative. And so if you look back into kind of the history of scripture and those types of things, there's a number of stories that outline this. People that get up and pray in front of everybody, it says they've received their reward in full. And then back in the first century Palestine, they would throw their money into these big horns, and they were made out of metal, and it would clink. And you'd know from the sound how much money they had given. And it says they've received their reward in full. So there's something about giving, and it says, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. And to think, you've got two hands. Can you imagine like one hand not knowing what the other hand is doing? I mean, it's almost absurd, right? To think that you wouldn't know what your other hand is doing. It's connected to who you are. But there's a story in this that is really important. And it's this idea of giving without taking the glory, without taking the reward up front. Because a real gift, true generosity, comes from a heart that recognizes that anything that you have is not your own. Okay, it's what's called stewardship. And so if we're going to live in a world of abundance, which I think people want, but so selfishly we think, I want to be in abundance. But what's interesting about abundance is it really has to be for everyone. And so as soon as you think about your own abundance, it collapses. And what I mean by that is the concept of true generosity is one of a gift that is considerate of the person that, or whatever you're doing and giving it for. But one of the things it says in the Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver. What does it mean to be a cheerful giver? Well, you probably know the stories of giving of first fruits. And this idea of giving of first fruits is that the people at the time would take the best of what they had, right? And out of a thankful heart for the provision, your crops produced tremendously, or you had this, bumper crop, or whatever it may be, or if you were dealing with, famine. is that you would say, all right, I recognize that where this stuff comes from isn't just the sweat of my brow. It's not just the efforts of my hands and my feet. And that anything that I have is actually a gift, because the fact that I'm alive and the fact that I can breathe air is actually a gift. And I think one of the things that's really important, and especially in our world of scarcity and in this world of selfish ambition, and we see ourselves as autonomous. We see ourselves as separate. We see ourselves as, I can do whatever I want. I can go wherever I want to go. I mean, self-determination, freedom, sovereignty, all that stuff, right? Yeah, this is my stuff. I'm going to do my thing. And that's true. And there's something really bold about that. But there's also a recognition that, hold on a second, why is it that when we hoard and when we gather and when we accumulate, we start thinking about ourselves as the one who created it? And in some cases, I would say, hey, you tended to a business and you created some value. You created it. Absolutely. But there's a bigger story in all this that says, well, why have you been given the ability, the creative ability to create value? My dog doesn't do that. I mean, I don't wake up in the morning, my dogs are outside, and I walk outside and I see that my dog has started a lemonade stand and is serving all of the other dogs in the neighborhood lemonade, making money, hand over fist or hand over hoof, or foot, whatever it would be, paw, hand over paw. I didn't think through that one very well. But the point is, we have this unique ability to create value. And we have this ability because we have breath and we happen to be in this context. And so one of the things that's amazing about generosity and about abundance is that, where does it come from? Well, it doesn't come from our hands directly. So if you think about this, the fact that we exist, we have the ability to think about these things, and we have the ability to create value, we have to recognize that it's connected to a source. And when you start recognizing that there's a source of the value, you realize, hold on a second, this isn't mine. This is a gift I've been given. And so when you do share out of abundance, out of your first fruits, out of a heart that is not interested in getting the glory or taking the recognition, it actually becomes something really, really, really powerful, because it becomes a true gift. And there's something really, really powerful about that, because there's no expectations in true generosity. There's no expectations. It's truly a gift. But imagine you're somebody who's in tremendous need and you're struggling, and someone thinks outside of themselves and recognizes something that's going on in you and says, you know what, I'm going to love that person and I feel led to give. It could be so many different things. We think of giving as in terms of money, but there's so many other things that you give, right? Your time. David Lee comes to my dad's funeral, right? He drives 7.5 hours from southwestern Indiana. It's a form of generosity, of one's time, of one's attention, of one's just support. And what you don't realize is that in the process of giving, you actually receive. And it's really counterintuitive. Because if you were to ask David Lee, and I have asked David Lee, he would say, you know what? I don't feel like I gave you anything. I felt like I received so much by going, because of all that happened while I was there. And that's why you know it's abundance, because the value of it is multiplied. When you receive your reward in full, when you toss your coins into the horn and everybody hears, wow, you're a big giver, right? You've received your reward in full. Well, it doesn't have the opportunity to multiply. But when you get yourself aligned and recognize that you're just a steward, meaning that you are just an agent, that you are just conduit through which this energy, in which this passes through and gives a gift to someone, is where abundance is unlocked. But abundance isn't just from the sweat of your brow. And that's a really, really important thing I want to share with you. What are we doing? Well, we as a team are trying to unlock this generosity in communities of people where trust exists currently. So we go to the Philippines, and a guy named John, who's amazing, loves and cares for people that are struggling in poverty and connects with an organization that serves 3,000 plus churches across the Philippines. And he says, I want to serve these people by giving. I want to advocate for these people because they don't have a voice. Okay, you got me. All right, I'm interested. What are we talking about? And then he's like, well, we got these tools called DeFi, decentralized financial tools. But where and how do they create value? Well, they actually create value when the group of people that are in community declare it. Well, that requires some unity. It requires some education. It requires people understanding, what are they declaring? What are we doing together? And then there's like code and technology that says, well, we want to set up the systems in order to buttress or support or reinforce the idea of what makes the number go up, and that is buying and holding. And so the brilliance of Richard Hart and the brilliance in his desire to create a better Bitcoin, he created Hex. The innovation in Hex, in my opinion, is this idea of trustless yield, that you get paid to hold in the token that you're holding. And what we see with the SEC and what we see right now in centralized crypto is the fact that you took your one set of coins and someone paid you to give you those coins. That's like essentially depositing them and then taking your money and investing it and paying you for your time. That's not what's happening in Hex. Even though I think we use analogies like it's like a certificate of deposit, right? Or we say Texan is like an endowment. What's really unique about this is in an actual endowment or a CD, the person who receives your token uses those to create more value by loaning them out or investing them, and it gets paid in something different. And that interest income isn't of the original token. It's not a multiplier. And so in that is this concept of multiplication, is that when you create something on the blockchain in a smart contract like Hex or Texan that generates yield in its native token, it's essentially a picture of multiplication. But its value comes from a group of people declaring it to have value. And so you have to have enough people contributing to this flywheel of economic energy and believing together in community that if we build this together, it will be something that can provide for us all. But it requires that agreement and declaration, and it's an amazing thing. It's a miraculous thing, to be completely honest with you, because those who don't understand and have not had the aha moment of what this really means and what this idea of DeFi and trustless yield really means, it's much more of a psychological and community experiment than anything else. Because, the first thing that critics would say is, oh, that's just a Ponzi scheme. Yeah. And life is a Ponzi scheme. Richard said this many times, and I completely agree with him. What happens if you don't have any more kids? What if you don't add more people to the population? It's over. So what do? We have kids, we train them up, and we put them into the workforce. So when we're old and decrepit, they provide for us, right? I mean, that's everything. So everything in this world requires growth. It requires new people into the system. So many times, and if you look at where we are in this era of crypto, and why I believe we're going to have one of the most amazing bull runs in this next era of crypto, is because it's going to become mainstream. And if you think about value, anytime that you accumulate value into a specific locality, or in this case, contract, When you consolidate and create value in one place, especially in a trustless contract that creates yield, what you end up doing is you create value that essentially enables a group of people to unlock something special because of that multiplication factor. And what does the multiplication factor comes from? It comes from the fact that not everybody sells at the same time. I was talking to my wife the other day and she was asking me, well, I don't understand how this stuff has value. And I said, well, let me ask you this question. Let's say we want to buy a house and we think, well, what do we want? How many bedrooms do we want to have? Where do we want it to be? And then what do? We ask a realtor or somebody, or we look online and we say, what are the comps? And what are comps but comparable properties? We say, well, what should we pay for something like this? And we say, well, let's look at what other things have sold for. Let's look at the market. And what ends up happening is you kind of get this lowest common denominator, which is square foot price. Well, what is the square footage? What's the average? What are people paying? And you start realizing, okay, well, if you go back 40 years, that same property, let's say it was still around, its square foot value was very different than it is now. And there's a lot of reasons, inflation and all kinds of things. But what's interesting about it is if everybody decided to sell their house exactly at the same time, the value of houses would go to zero. Everything would. So what is value but a slice of time related to supply and demand? So we were looking at buying a house in the top of the market. And at the top of the market, people were moving into Texas from California and paying cash. We went to buy a house and we offered $25,000 over the asking price. And someone came in from California with cash and paid $150,000 cash over the asking price. Crazy. Well, we clearly didn't buy that. But what's amazing about it is it's supply and demand. And that's what determines the value of houses in our area. And we might communicate them by the square foot value price. But if everybody wants to sell their houses at once, the value of houses is zero. And so the same thing is true with crypto. This is a digital asset, but you might as well just consider it square footage of a house. Is that what is this thing and what does it do? In this case, we look at it as a commodity that is a store of value, and it creates value when you hold it. So it has, you get more of it the longer you wait. Okay, that sounds good. But at the end of the day, once you create the market in a decentralized exchange like Uniswap, someone makes that market and has incentive to make that market by pairing something of known value with Texan token or Hex. Well, think about this for a second. The market cap of Hex has got to be, 8 billion or more, depending on how you measure it. The market cap right now of Texan token is 1.7 billion, which is amazing. But here's the thing. What's the liquidity? Meaning, what is the market? Well, just because your house has 5,000 square feet and the average price per square foot is $124 a foot doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sell your house next week. Would you say that it has that value? Absolutely, it has that value. But the question is, it only has that value if somebody's willing to buy it. And so what is the market? Cryptocurrency is no different than any of that stuff. There's a market, there's a supply, and there's a demand. If no one wants to buy it, no one buys it, right? People want to sell it. More sellers than buyers, the price goes down. More buyers than sellers, the price goes up. And so let's say somebody wants to push the price to zero. All they have to do is take a big sell and sell it all the way down, eat all the slippage, and they can push anything to zero. So really, this is a psychological challenge. So how do you unlock abundance? And that's the big theme of this whole stream today. Well, how do I unlock abundance? Well, we're declaring value together. We're making a market, and it has supply and demand. Well, what drives the supply and demand? Well, a bunch of people moving in from California drives the demand of houses in Central Texas. What drives the demand for Texan token or Hex or cryptocurrency or anything like that? Well, right now it's speculation. Well, I think that if I hold this thing and I get more of it, that in the future it might be worth more money. Why? Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I think one of the interesting things that we have to factor in, because everyone asks the question, what's the utility? Well, the utility might be, well, making money, right? Speculating on the value of something. But the secondary piece may be this: there's going to be a point in the future in which these centers of value become useful in essentially as a means of exchange, or at least as a bridge to a means of exchange. And let me explain. The CBDCs and all the things the government's trying to do, they understand the value of digital assets. But what the amazing thing that's happened is, and they know this is why they're so fearful of it, is that the cat's already out of the bag. Pandora's box has already been opened by Satoshi. And the fact of the matter is that you have this ability to generate and accumulate value in digital form without them. And of course, centralized planners don't like you doing things without them being in control. And so, what does Bitcoin represent? Well, how do they dominate it? By taking all the hash power, by consolidating and centralizing all of it, right? So that's one way. And because it's got limitations, they're pretty good about it. So, in my opinion, Bitcoin is not doing what it was intended to do. It's certainly not, digital cash. It's certainly a store of value. But now you look at Ethereum, and you look at smart contracts, and you look at altcoins, and then you look at CBDCs. Well, the reason that stable coins are so attractive is because people don't want to, and they don't want to tolerate the volatility that comes with the price going up and down so much. And so they want something that's going to be tied to value so that they can use it. So if we're going to go to a mainstream environment in crypto and we're going to unlock abundance in the process, we need to recognize that there will be a day that's coming when the infrastructure is in place where you can buy yourself a Coca-Cola with some Texan or some Hex. That's coming. What would have to happen? Well, we've accumulated all of this value into a flywheel and encouraged more buyers and sellers. And let's say the price goes up and there's a lot of speculators in the market, and not everybody sells at once. And you've got something that is got some economic energy to it. That's clearly what Hex had, right? 10,000X in 623 days. And then it dropped 95%. As it builds back, and as this becomes more mainstream, what's happened is these centers of value, places where people in community have declared the value and literally put a proxy for their labor into it. Because think of what you're doing. You're working probably, driving a truck, doing something. You're getting paid probably hourly, or you get some sort of salary. That's your labor, and you take a proxy for it. What's the proxy? It's a piece of paper. Many times it just digitally goes into your account in a direct deposit, and you don't even see the cash. Now you could pull it out of an ATM, but they'll only let you have $500. So at the end of the day, you're taking a proxy for your own labor and you're contributing it into an economic center. And in this case, an immutable smart contract that pays you more to hold it. Well, it's no different than you putting it somewhere else. But when you recognize that people working together in community and declaring value and accumulating that value in a place, it actually has value, provided that it's not manipulated. And that's why we like trustless yield and immutable contracts, because we have a little bit more faith that a centralized player is not going to basically destroy it or print more or rug pull us. But the future hope of this is that it would be something that can auto convert and get me the thing that I want. Because at the end of the day, all that really exists of value is products and services. And those are tied to human creativity, and it's tied to your labor and your time for the most part. So once we put these things into these proxies, whether they be paper cash, digital cash, cryptocurrency, or whatever, it's a storehouse of that value for use to get some other product or service. It's really just an extended barter system. But what's amazing about abundance and unlocking it, and why I even talk about all these things from the philosophical stuff of giving and real generosity and real stewardship and love, is the fact that the power exists when we recognize that if we can work together, we can accomplish just about anything, provided that it's not purely selfishly motivated. So, why Texas? Why independence of Texas? Well, people are getting to the point where they're fed up with these things, and they're like, "We've got to do something. We got to change something." Well, here's an option, and you have to give people alternatives to the current system. And so, some people will freak out. They're like, "You can't do that." Well, actually, yes, you can. And people are like, "You can't create your own money and create your own value." Well, yeah, we can. If you convince enough people to move out into a field and to build their houses around you and plant some crops, and Brandon comes in and puts up his florist shop, right? And ZZ Tesco opens up the casino, you've created value. Because where people are and their creative ability, their time, energy, effort, and proxies for their labor get contributed. At the beginning, you're probably just trading services and goods, but then it makes it more convenient to use credit or some sort of representation of value. That's all this is. But the beauty of this is once you know it and you understand that, hold on a second, if we trust each other and we care about each other's future, there's a multiplication factor that we can take advantage of in this system. And the beauty of cryptocurrency, in my opinion, is that core idea that we come together believing in each other and in something that is a pretty darn good alternative to centralized players changing database records and printing 5 trillion more dollars. And we say, wow, so we could, in this decentralized ledger called the blockchain, contribute our proxies for labor into this, delay our gratification, be rewarded for holding, and potentially we could have an abundance. But here's the thing. Do you sell your house every day? No, you live in it. It creates value and benefit and a roof over your head. But what everyone is wanting to say about cryptocurrency is they're like, oh, it's so volatile and all this kind of stuff. Well, yeah, everything is if everyone doesn't have faith in it. And that's how empires fall. And so what ends up happening? What's a run on the bank? A run on the bank is the sentiment of the people. They've lost trust. And it's funny that this is called trustless yield, this whole thing, right? It's a trustless system. Well, it's actually based on trust because the group of people who believe in it are trusting that it's going to do what it says it's going to do. But why it's so powerful is it's not controlled by people who, in many cases, act selfishly. So in a way, it's kind of like America in its early days, and why it's such a really strong idea that these men who won this war, the battles of independence, guys like George Washington, could have been kings. And they said, you know what? The best thing we could do is to give away the power to the people. No, I'm not continuing to run for president. We need to teach them how to transition. We need to teach people that if we work together and we trust each other and we extend grace and love to one another, we can build something really special that takes care of us and our posterity in the future. So to me, what's happening in cryptocurrency, what's happening in Texan and Ophir and Hex and in our community is something way bigger. And it's a multiplication factor of people who are trusting, well, one, a contract that's immutable, but two, each other. And as they contribute into something, they believe in a future and they understand that, you know what? This is better than anything else we've got. And what would happen if this becomes mainstream and I can pick up a Coca-Cola at the corner store with my Texan or my Hex? It's coming, folks. And you'll know this because this is how technology has developed throughout the years. When I first got into the internet, right? All of the developments in the internet, I couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, I remember 1996, Netscape was the first one to have the SSL encryption. Was it 128-bit encryption that enabled a credit card transaction to be safely done online? And I remember people asking, grandma's calling, "You sure I can put my credit card in on this website?" The fear, all kinds of fear. What do you mean a MetaMask wallet? What do you mean a public address? What do you mean all these things? Fear. Well, this stuff is like, that's funny money. Well, that's what they said about the internet. And now we got AI, and now we got crypto. Folks, you're early in this game, but also I want you to understand that you play a part in this process, because what's amazing about it is it's a picture of something really, really special. When you remove evil choices, meaning this ability to monkey with the system, this ability to change a database record, to rug pull, to hack, to deceive, to lie. When you remove that and you have this trustless, you gather an immense amount of economic energy. And if this is why when people say about Hex, they're like, well, no, the OA has never sold a coin. Well, think about this. Even if the OA wanted to, do you know the maximum amount Richard could get out of Hex is maybe whatever the liquidity is? And he'd eat so much slippage and it would go to zero. I mean, it's just people don't understand that. They think that Hex is $8 billion sitting in like a magic leprechaun's pot at the end of a rainbow. No, it's made up of whoever has put the pairs together. And if you wanted to sell that stuff down, you'd eat so much slippage and you might get 20 million out of it, maybe. And is that worth it? No. And that's the beauty of the system. You can't sell all the houses all at once, folks. But this is where we take back power. And this is where the idea of Texas independence comes back in. We're seeing this picture in crypto, and it's the same damn thing. Are you going to believe it or not? That's what it's about. Are you going to believe that we can be independent, a self-governing, independent nation? Oh, I don't know if we can do that. It starts with a belief. And it's got to prove itself to you, right? I respect anyone who's skeptical about these things. You want to pick the right horse to ride. But I'm telling you, what does it mean? And what's it worth? And I look at, I stared at my dad in a casket, right? If I live as long as he did, I've got what? 23 more years? If I'm lucky. We're going to go out with a bang, folks. We're poised to have the most amazing, abundant future. But if we're just selfishly motivated going, I'm just going to get mine. I'm going to step on your head. I'm going to climb over you and stomp on you in the process. Yep, you might get a Lambo. But I believe that this is actually spiritually driven. There is one who is prowling around wanting to devour us. And this is such a pivotal time. I mentioned this with Scott Jankowski, and I mentioned this with Scott Foster Harris. Jesus comes out of the wilderness, right? And he's tempted 3 times by Satan himself. And the first temptation was, hey, turn these rocks into bread. And of course, Satan knew that Jesus could do that. And he said, nope, man does not live on bread alone, but out of every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So I would submit to you, you and I have the ability to listen to the words that come out of the mouth of God. Who is God? But the creator of all things. Do you think the creator of all things knows more than you and I do? Heck yeah, he does. But guess what? Who you're listening to? You're listening to men. And you're listening to lowercase g gods. Klaus Schwab. Right? You're being blown around on the wind. And what he said was very clearly, you have access to me. Man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So here's the big question. If you're just stewards and your breath comes not from your own power, and you know these things, and you have the potential for abundance, but the only way you get it is that you help another beggar find some food, then we got some work to do. We got some work to do. There's an abundance of food here. And really, in a way, the more that you enjoy it, the more it grows. And the more you care about others eating that food, the more it grows. And then the community grows and it multiplies in its value, not just in its value, face value, but in its love, in its affection, in its concern, its consideration. And then maybe when your dad dies, David Lee will show up at your funeral. And he'll help you out and go, bro, let me divide your pain and multiply your joy. And what's really interesting is this is kind of the story of the early church in the world. What were they? Acts 2:42 says, the people committed themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread. And as anyone had any need, they helped each other out. Welcome to Hexaco. People caring and being concerned about other people. A guy was on Twitter last night at Hexagon. He's like, yeah, my dad's dying. And I'm sad about it. And he's given up. And so I thought I'd take my guitar and I'd go and I'd play him some music. And he was just like, hey, you Hexicans and Pulsicans, hey. And he shared that, which, you gotta, that's bravery in my opinion, being that transparent with people. He shared that stuff, and so people are like, hey man, we're praying for you. And yeah, it's hard. And we're trying to divide his pain, right? We're like, hey, yeah, we'll bear that burden with you. And he gave an update. He's like, hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, I got a thumbs up from him. Folks, when you're on your deathbed, crypto don't matter a bit. Community of people does, the people that care about you. And what is it? It's an accumulation not only of trustless yield, but of care and concern and love for other people. Because I'll tell you what, you can't take a dime with you. But what we have here is extremely special. And so if you're willing to forego your reward now, delay your gratification, if you will, right? Not let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. Be concerned about others in addition to yourself. We can literally free the captives. We can have our own nations. We can have our own value. We can rule over a land in a decentralized way that creates a better future for our families. But we have to act. But here's the thing about it is, it says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. What do you have to do? Love people. Give to them. Care about them. Be concerned about them. What are benevolent kings if they are not those who listen and are concerned for those that they serve? Because those that want to be great should become a servant, not somebody that says, look at me, I'm the greatest. No, those are not the ones that are greatest. The ones that serve are. Well, that's what the blockchain's all about. That's what this community is all about. Hold on a second. So if I help people and serve them and show them where the food is, the food grows and I benefit more and I have more to eat. Yep, that's how it works. And we do that all outside of the government. It's not a centralized controlled party. And I'm not selling a product. Nope. No, you're just telling people where the food is. That's how you unlock abundance. It's counterintuitive, my friends, but it is incredibly special and incredibly powerful. And I believe it's actually the way in which things were created. So we're aligning ourselves with actual value of creation. Because what does it come out of? The creative ability that you've been gifted to, because you're not an animal. You're not the descendant of a monkey. You have skills and abilities that are way beyond my dog. And that creative ability manifests itself in proxies for labor that we accumulate together in trusted community, and it multiplies. If you can get this stuff, folks, you realize, oh my gosh, this is the greatest time we could ever possibly be, because the implications of it aren't just, I've got some more money than you do. It's a literal transformation, because what are we doing? We're acknowledging the fact that it is not from our hands and it is not from the sweat of our brow that our breath is given to us. Man does not live on bread alone, but out of every word that comes out of the mouth of God. We have access to the divine creation, and we need to walk in it, and we need to serve and care and love other people. It's not hard. It's just not super comfortable. It's not what we're used to. We're used to hoarding. I've told the story of the feeding of the 5,000. People go out in the first century Palestine to listen to this guy Jesus talk. You don't think they're going to bring their own food and water? But you know what they did? They probably had cloaks and backpacks and all these bags, and they probably, you know what they were saying? I worked hard for this money. This is my water and my fish and my bread. You didn't catch this. You didn't grind up the wheat. This is mine. And no, I'm not giving it to you. And they all had their stuff. And this guy's speaking, and Andrew comes to Jesus. He's like, hey, these people are hungry. How are we going to feed them all? And rather than Jesus say, well, why don't they just eat what they brought? A boy comes up to him and says, hey, you can have my 5 loaves and 2 fish, which was all the food potentially of his family. And what did it do when someone gave? It unlocked abundance. This is what we're called to do. We're called to give. And it's not just give like, I'll give you some money. No, give of yourself. Why did the Hex community grow the way that it did? Because people gave of themselves. I'm going to take my time and I'm going to do a stream, or you're going to like and subscribe, or you're going to do something. You bring value to the table. You don't think it's value, but it is value. You go to a meetup, you say nice things to people, you high five them, you do TA for somebody. Hey, this is how I see it. It's related to the lunar cycles. All that stuff is value. You bring value to the table. It's not just buying Hex on the market, although you do that too. But you don't realize how that accumulates value and value. And then what happens is when stuff goes sideways, people don't freak out. And the SEC's like, we need letters from all these people. And then it's not a run on the bank. Why? Because there's more value than just the number go up here, folks. What's the utility of the Richer Heart ecosystem? What is the utility of all this stuff? Community, love, care for one another, intangible value, belongingness, fitting in, being accepted. I would say 95% of people have no clue how special this is. It's a gift. And if you get it, boy, you just want to scream it from the rooftops, because it's an extension of the abundance that this world was created around, that our selfish asses have completely turned upside down. And so we fight over scarcity and we go kill people in Ukraine, and we want to regime change Russia. Why? Because we want their oil and gas contracts. And we go in and we blow up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline as an act of sabotage, so you can't do deals with Russia. So you have to take our oil and we can charge you 4 times as much. And we can tell you that there's weapons of mass destruction, so we can take down leadership and we can control the oil and gas. But this shouldn't be a surprise to you. This is the human heart. It's corrupt above all else. But I'm going to tell you, this battle is not between flesh and blood. The battle is much greater, because we're called actually to a future in which we are tethered to that whom created us. And when we get aligned with that correctly, we see abundance. And that's what I want to see. That's what I all want it to be about. So what am I doing? I'm like, hey, let's raise some money. Let's get an organization. Let's formalize it. Let's be full-time. Let's go after these communities. Let's do everything we can to make a case that there's food. And where is the value? In your heart. The heart of your people that are already in community. You're mining gold in the hearts of men and women. Why? Because when they believe together, it multiplies value. Well, it tangibly comes in the form of a token that has trustless yield. It's like an endowment. You can stake it and you can get more. But what really is going on is you're unlocking value. It's in the hearts of people that are in trusted community. It's a miracle. But I'm going to do everything I can to convince people that, hey, this is a pathway to what you want: freedom, sovereignty, independence, abundance. But you can't do it outside of the context of caring, considerate, thoughtful community. It's impossible. So, what are you going to do? So, here's the cool thing: you don't have to do it all. Think about others in addition to yourself. That's how you do it. Well, think about, well, what should I do right now? Stop and pause and think. What could I do? It may be a good word to somebody. It may be liking this video. It might be subscribing or sharing. It may be buying something. It may be calling your mother. Call your mother. My yoke is easy, my burden is light, he says. So, folks, I just want you to, I'm turning myself inside out. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring everything I got to the table to convince you that you don't realize how good it could be if we work together. So, we want to tokenize communities. Texas Nationalist Movement, most of the people there have no idea. The food's sitting right in front of you, folks. But it takes people to share it with other people. I can't do it all. All I can do is give. I feel like the boy who's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. I'll give you everything I got. Here you go. Knock yourself out. I hope you see it. And then talk about it. Hey, food's over here. Hey, come get the food. And hopefully other people are like, hey, get the food. And then guys like, Hexologist or RG3 or Kinetics or Maddie or Coffee or whoever it is goes, hey, the food's over here, guys. Hey, look, it's called Hex. Trust the Shield, T-shares. And then people are like, yeah, man, and it's like this. And let's look at TA. And everyone builds upon it. And then there's a Hedron. And then there's Icosa and Watsa and all this stuff. This is how it begins. Now imagine 10 years from now, 50 years from now. What does it look like? And I think we like to go, well, what's the Hex price in 50 years? We're amassing centers of value. And ultimately, when this becomes mainstream, when it has the infrastructure that you can literally go and get a Coca-Cola at the corner and your Hex auto converts to the stable coin that entrepreneur wants to receive in that structure, and they want USDC, it auto happens. And here you go. All this time, energy, and effort that you did to try to tell people where the food is generated the food, and it's abundant. And in my opinion, when you have an abundance, you're not going to buy weapons of war, and you're not going to create new gates. You're going to care for those people that you care about. It's going to decentralize this damn system, and it's going to push back on the evilness that is in centralized parties trying to control you through fear. Thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. Do not mess with Texas. Thanks for joining, folks.